The jungle shimmered under the alien moonlight, every branch glistening with the condensation of foreign storms. The hunters moved as shadows among the foliage, cloaked in chitin armor and ritual scars that marked generations of perfected killing. Their mandibles clicked in silent code as they fanned out, each step practiced, deliberate, the weight of tradition pressing upon them. They had hunted creatures across galaxies, monstrosities with fangs longer than a hunter's forearm, telepathic beasts that drove entire war bands mad, prey that screamed until their lungs collapsed. Nothing had ever truly surprised them. Nothing had ever lived to challenge their supremacy. Tonight, they believed, would be no different. The prize was a human. Fragile, soft-skinned, a species barely climbing the ladder of the stars. They whispered of humans as clever but weak, too reliant on technology to survive in the wild. The hunters relished the absurdity of being asked to chase such a creature. It was beneath them, and yet, their honor demanded they prove dominance over every species offered to the hunt. That was their way, a cycle of conquest and demonstration, their gods watching through the stars. To fail, even against prey so feeble, would be unthinkable. They had studied their quarry briefly before release. 2 arms, 2 legs, unimpressive musculature. No claws. No venom. Eyes designed for daylight rather than the predator's realm of shadows. And yet there had been that strange detail, records of humans resisting enslavement, throwing themselves into hopeless odds, even turning battles by sheer obstinacy. The elders scoffed at such tales, calling them exaggerations. Hunters did not believe in myths, only the ritual of the kill. Still, a faint note of curiosity lingered in the air as they advanced. The terrain favored them. The undergrowth muffled their footsteps, their bodies cloaked in the heat-dampening exquisites of their kind. Their vision cut easily through foliage, detecting the faint thermal outline of life. They spotted him at last, crouched in a clearing lit by the pale reflection of twin moons. He was still. No trembling. No frantic scrambling. Just stillness, as though he were waiting for them. The hunters slowed, antennae twitching in disbelief. Prey always fled. Always. One of them hissed a query to the others, a pulse of pheromones lacing the humid air. Why does it not run? The leader sent back only silence, a command to continue. The circle closed in, 20 strong, their formation flawless. Ritual demanded patience. The prey must first be encircled, trapped, given the illusion of escape before the final strike. It was part of the dance, as old as their bloodlines. The human's face turned toward them, pale skin catching the light, eyes glimmering not with terror but something else they could not name. His breathing was steady, shoulders squared as if daring the jungle itself. He held no weapon, no tool, nothing that should have given him confidence. And yet there was a presence about him, the kind predators recognized in one another. The hunters began their descent, bodies weaving between trees, mandibles parted in anticipation of the kill. They expected panic, eyes wide, feet scrambling, the sweet rush of adrenaline filling the air. But the clearing remained unnervingly calm. Every step closer revealed more detail, the faint scars on his arms, the set of his jaw, the quiet calculation in his gaze. It was wrong. Prey did not calculate. Prey pleaded, screamed, begged the gods for mercy. This one simply watched. The leader felt the first stir of unease but pushed it aside. The others must not sense doubt. Tradition demanded confidence. Honor demanded blood. He raised his spear weapon, the obsidian edge glinting faintly. The others followed, a semicircle tightening around their quarry. The human shifted his weight slightly, the faintest adjustment, as though aligning himself with some rhythm only he understood. The hunters detected no fear spike in his pheromones, no erratic heartbeat. If anything, his calm deepened. The leader loosed another pheromone command, strike soon. The prey weakens. But even as the signal spread, doubt coiled in the shadows of his mind. The air grew heavier, as though the forest itself held its breath. Night insects quieted. Leaves ceased rustling. The silence stretched thin, and for the first time, the hunters felt not like predators but like figures in a play they had not rehearsed. The human's eyes swept the line of armored bodies surrounding him, not in desperation but with measured recognition. The leader braced, preparing the final signal. Ritual demanded swift execution, the taking of the prey's life as proof of supremacy. Yet before the command left him, before the hunters could surge forward, the human's lips curved in something they had never seen from prey. Not fear. Not surrender. Something colder, sharper. And though the strike had not yet begun, though their weapons still hovered in readiness, every hunter felt it, the inversion of the hunt. Something intangible shifted, and they realized with chilling clarity that this fragile creature had never been prey at all. The hunters advanced with precision, each movement synchronized by instinct and ritual. Their bodies glided between the trunks, weapons raised, heat sense flickering over the lone human who waited in silence. The circle narrowed, the faint hiss of their breathers echoing like serpents in the dark. Every motion told the same story: inevitability, supremacy, the perfection of countless hunts. And yet something pressed against the edges of their discipline: unease. The human had not moved as prey should. He had not bolted, he had not panicked, and now, as the distance closed to mere strides, he remained unnervingly composed. One hunter broke formation, hunger for glory driving his limbs. He lunged, spear slicing the air, but what should have been a killing thrust met nothing but emptiness. The human shifted, a step so measured it appeared casual, and in that single movement the predator was robbed of balance. The weapon clattered against stone as the human's hand snapped to the shaft, twisting with leverage born not of strength but of precision. The hunter stumbled back, stunned. His kind had faced opponents that roared, clawed, lashed out in desperation. Never one who flowed like water and answered without wasted effort. The others tightened their grip, eyes flaring with disbelief. The circle became rigid, predatory calm beginning to splinter. A chorus of pheromone questions rippled across the group. How? Why does it resist? What manner of prey is this? The leader silenced them with a blast of command, though even he could not ignore the sting of doubt. The human did not press the advantage. He simply stood again in the center, hands loose at his sides, gaze locked upon each of them in turn. It was not defiance in the form they understood, roaring challenge, overt display, but something far colder. He acknowledged their presence not as lords of the hunt but as equals, perhaps even as interlopers trespassing on ground he already owned. One of the younger hunters snarled, mandibles wide, and hurled a hooked blade. It spun true, gleaming, meant to carve flesh. Yet the human ducked, not frantically but with uncanny timing, as though he had seen the throw before it was made. The blade embedded in a tree trunk with a dull thud. A hiss of frustration rippled among the pack. Their weapons had ended larger, swifter prey, but this fragile being slipped through their efforts as though guided by fate. The clearing became an arena of breathless waiting. No one rushed again immediately. The hunters exchanged rapid signals, adjusting their formation, abandoning ritual for pragmatism. The old dance of encirclement no longer held. They were now strategizing against something that did not fit their memory, something unpredictable. They readjusted distances, overlapping fields of attack, every movement betraying the first threads of caution. The human remained unshaken. His posture was neither defensive nor aggressive, a stance designed to unnerve. They realized then that his stillness was a weapon, denying them the reaction they craved, denying them the fear scent that should have intoxicated their senses. Instead of feeding upon terror, they were left with emptiness, their predator's instincts starved. The realization gnawed at them. This creature understood their hunger and withheld its fuel. Another hunter, larger and scarred with decades of victory, approached with deliberate care, weapon raised for a measured strike. The human's eyes tracked him, not with desperation but with calm anticipation. The moment the weapon cut downward, the human shifted again, one hand snapping against the shaft, body twisting with a practiced torque. The strike missed its target by inches, redirected harmlessly, leaving the veteran off balance. A sudden shove sent him staggering, armor scraping the earth. Humiliation lanced the air like fire. The pack hissed in disarray. These were not defeats in the traditional sense. No blood had spilled, no lives were lost. Yet each failure eroded the certainty upon which their identity rested. They were predators bred on inevitability, and this human was rewriting inevitability with every breath. The leader's eyes narrowed. The silence of the clearing deepened, broken only by the faint drip of water from overhanging leaves. His senses, honed by countless hunts, screamed warnings he had never felt before. The prey was not prey. The prey had chosen this moment, and they were merely participants in its design. The circle drew tighter, weapons poised to strike in unison. Tension pulsed like a living thing, as though the forest itself recoiled from what was about to unfold. All at once, they prepared to collapse upon him, 20 hunters converging with lethal certainty. And in that charged instant, before blades could descend, a sound split the silence. Low, rising, alien to their ears, yet heavy with intent. It was not the cry of the cornered or the scream of the doomed. It was a laugh, human and unbroken, resonant with something they could neither classify nor endure. The sound rolled through the clearing, raw and unrestrained. It was not a sound they understood, yet it carried weight heavier than any war cry. The laugh rose from the human's chest with a steadiness that made the air itself tremble. It was not the voice of prey. It was something older, something that belonged not to a victim but to a being who saw death as no end at all. The hunters froze. Their training told them to strike. Their instincts told them to retreat. Between those commands, hesitation opened like a wound. The human stood with shoulders squared, mouth curved in that unsettling rhythm, the laugh stretching into the dark as though mocking the night itself. No species in their long history had met death with mirth. They had seen fear, rage, desperation, even eerie calm, but never joy. Never this wild acknowledgement of danger that turned the role of predator into spectacle. Each hunter felt it in the marrow of their bones. This sound was not meant for survival. It was meant to unnerve, to challenge, to declare that fear had no home here. The younger hunters twitched, uncertain whether to advance or hold. Their eyes darted to their leader, who remained rigid, staring at the human with mandibles clenched. In his core, he realized the balance of power had shifted. Ritual, weapons, numbers, none of it mattered if their prey refused the roll. The human had stripped from them the certainty that made the hunt sacred. When the laugh faded into a low rumble, the clearing seemed to tilt toward madness. The human finally spoke, words sharp and short, tone laced with steady confidence. Though the language was not theirs, translation devices carried the meaning clearly enough. "You think I fear you?" The hunters shuddered. To be named out loud by prey was an insult, to be addressed with calmness while surrounded an affront beyond measure. Another sentence followed, cutting deeper. "I fear nothing that bleeds." Simple, brutal, stripped of ornament. The message needed no further explanation. It was not bravado, not noise to cover panic. It was truth. He believed it, and that belief carried weight heavier than their weapons. The pack's breathing grew uneven. They smelled no terror on him. Instead, they detected a strange sharpness in his pheromones, a clarity they could not name. It was focus, intensity refined into something they had no word for. To them, fear was fuel, but here it was absent. Without it, their rhythm faltered. The human took a step forward. Not a charge, not an attack, just one step. Yet the pack recoiled slightly, as though the ground itself shifted under that movement. His laugh returned, shorter this time, cutting through the air like a blade. The sound spoke of defiance, of survival against odds countless times before, of a creature shaped not by victory but by struggle and the refusal to bow. Memories flickered among them, echoes of old stories they had dismissed, whispers of humans who had bitten captors even when chained, who had kept fighting after bodies were broken, who had turned hopeless resistance into victory. They had thought them exaggerations. Now, standing before the laughing man, those tales no longer seemed so far-fetched. The leader tried to rally them with a pheromone command, but his own pulse betrayed hesitation. He realized with horror that his authority faltered because he too felt the weight of the laugh pressing against his chest. It was not just sound. It was a weapon, carving into discipline, splitting certainty, infecting even the strongest with the notion that perhaps they were not the hunters here. The human's eyes swept over them again, calm and unblinking. "You came for a hunt," he said through the translator, voice steady. But you found a war. The words struck harder than any blow, because they carried the promise of what would follow. They realized he had not survived this long by accident. His composure, his timing, his refusal to give them what they expected, all of it was deliberate. The circle loosened. Small shifts of stance betrayed their fear. For the first time, they considered retreat, though the shame of it burned in their blood. To turn from prey was dishonor, yet the human's laugh had made them question if they were even the predators anymore. The clearing remained still, yet no silence could erase the echo of that sound. It had entered their minds like a seed, and already it was growing. They had not spilled his blood, yet somehow he had already struck the first blow. The forest floor shifted as the hunters moved again, but the rhythm of their advance no longer carried the certainty it once did. The humans' laughter lingered like smoke, wrapping around their senses, dulling the edge of their resolve. One tried to surge forward, hoping sheer speed might smother the unease, but his strike faltered. The human caught the motion early, stepping aside with sharp efficiency, and drove his shoulder into the hunter's chest. The armored body crashed into the earth, stunned. The others hesitated, their advantage of numbers suddenly fragile. The next attempt came from two at once, blades angled to cross. The human dropped low, snatching a stone from the ground and hurling it into one warrior's mask. The crack staggered the target off balance, and before the second could adjust, the human rolled, scooping the discarded weapon from the fallen. A swift arc forced them both to retreat. The hunters were no strangers to adaptation, yet in every exchange they found themselves trailing behind. Their tactics relied on patterns, rehearsed maneuvers honed over centuries. He fought outside those rules, every move born of improvisation, refusing to offer the predictability they required to dominate. The jungle seemed to join his side. Branches snapped back into their faces when he vanished through foliage. Rocks shifted beneath their feet, disturbed by traps hastily laid. They realized, with a creeping chill, that he was not only reacting but reshaping the battleground. Their prey had taken command of the terrain, bending it to his will. Each failure pressed upon their discipline like weight upon a cracking shell. One hunter fell into a pit masked by loose leaves, his screech muffled as sharpened sticks pierced his armor. Another tripped a snare, vines lashing around his limbs before the human's boot crushed his throat. These were not random chances but deliberate designs, crafted with speed and clarity impossible for one who should have been consumed by fear. With each loss, the circle frayed further, honor unraveling into chaos. The leader fought to hold order, issuing commands with pheromone bursts, but every signal carried the sour trace of desperation. His warriors no longer moved as shadows, they stumbled, glancing over shoulders, anticipating threats they could not predict. The human's presence carved into their rhythm, turning them from hunters into hunted. He moved through them like a phantom, striking only when assured of impact, disappearing before retaliation could land. Their weapons grew heavy in their hands, every swing wasted against nothing but air. Fatigue crept into muscles bred for dominance, sharpened by the fear that gnawed deeper with each passing moment. The prey was not retreating, not resisting, he was dismantling them. The older hunter, scarred from countless victories, attempted to rally with a bellowing roar. The human met him head-on, steel clashing against obsidian. Sparks flared in the night as they struggled. Yet where the alien relied on brute strength, the human wielded timing. A twist, a sudden shift, and the obsidian blade skittered from claws. The counter-strike buried deep into his side, dropping him to the dirt. Silence followed, the pack staring at the veteran's collapse. Something broke in that silence. Their collective memory of triumph cracked under the sight of their champion bleeding into the soil. Fear spread like contagion, stripping them of the illusion of control. They began to question not the prey but themselves, whether they had ever truly ruled this hunt. The human stood over the fallen body, expression carved from stone, chest rising with steady breath. He did not gloat, did not taunt. His silence spoke louder than any word, declaring the inevitability of what came next. The others shifted backward, steps small, their formation collapsing. They still held weapons, but none dared to advance. The humans' unpredictability had hollowed out their courage. Every movement from him carried intent, each glance cutting into them as though measuring which would fall next. They realized, with growing horror, that he had no need for numbers. Alone, he had turned the hunt into a lesson, showing them what it meant to stalk something that refused to yield. The clearing now belonged to him. Not because he had slain them all, but because he had taken from them the one thing they could not fight without, certainty. And as the night stretched on, they felt the truth sink into marrow and memory. The prey they had mocked had remade the story, turning predators into shadows fumbling in fear. The survivors pulled back, steps uneven, weapons trembling in hands that had never known such weakness. The air still carried the echo of the laugh, faint but impossible to silence. Their eyes flicked to the bodies strewn across the ground, comrades who should have been unshakable, brought down one after another by the very being they had sworn would be easiest to claim. The ritual of dominance was broken. What remained was shame, and shame was poison to their kind. The human stood in the center of the clearing, shoulders squared, breath steady, not triumphant but resolute. He did not chase those who retreated. He did not need to. The lesson had already been written into their blood. His stillness was heavier than pursuit, for it declared that he feared nothing they could attempt. In silence, he reminded them that he had stripped their power without the aid of armies, machines, or kin. He had done it alone. The leader, battered and trembling, locked eyes with him for a final time. In that gaze he saw not arrogance but something far worse, indifference. To the human, they were not predators or gods of the hunt. They were obstacles, and obstacles were meant to be overcome. His mandibles twitched with the urge to rally, to reclaim honor, but the weight pressing against him was too great. He turned away, signaling retreat. The others followed, broken lines scattering into the jungle. Their footsteps did not sound like hunters withdrawing. They sounded like prey fleeing into the night. As the forest swallowed them, the man lowered the weapon he had taken. He let it fall to the dirt, the blade glinting faintly before it stilled. His eyes scanned the horizon, cold and unwavering. He had not fought for glory. He had not fought for the satisfaction of killing. He had fought to remind both himself and any who would ever challenge his kind that humanity did not kneel. Even when alone. Even when surrounded. Especially then. Word of the hunt spread before dawn. The few who survived carried with them no trophies, no pride, only the tale of the human who had laughed in the face of certain death. They spoke in hushed tones, voices shaking, unable to erase the sound from their minds. What began as whispers among their own ranks bled into the larger networks of their species. The laugh grew into legend, retold not with embellishment but with dread. Among predator clans, stories served as warnings, shaping future hunts. This one grew faster than any before. They did not say, "A human fought." They said, "A human laughed." That detail mattered more than the kills, more than the traps, more than the blood spilled. Because laughter meant defiance. Laughter meant refusal to bow to the role assigned. Laughter meant every lesson they had believed about prey and predator was flawed. Other species heard the tale. Some doubted, as the hunters once had. But the doubt faltered when they looked at history and saw how often humanity had turned desperation into triumph. Wars fought on dying worlds. Survival carved from planets that tried to kill them. Resilience where surrender should have been the only option. The laugh in the jungle was not anomaly. It was confirmation. For the man himself, there was no celebration. When the last sound of his enemies faded into the distance, he sat upon the earth, body aching but unbowed. His silence returned, heavy and contemplative. He knew they would spread the story, and he understood what it would become. He had not sought to be a legend, yet legends are never chosen by those who embody them. They are chosen by those who need them. By dawn, the forest returned to its usual rhythm, the insects humming, the leaves shifting with wind. Only the blood and the broken weapons remained as evidence. Yet across the stars, a new current began to move. The image of humans as fragile, as weak, as simple prey, fractured. The laugh had destroyed it more thoroughly than any battle fleet. For fleets can be beaten, weapons can be broken, but the will to face death and answer with mirth cannot be erased. And so it was said among the predators, beware the human who laughs. For when the laugh begins, the hunt has already ended.